back to the Profits on Purpose podcast, where we explore the journeys of purpose-led founders and the financial strategies that have helped them survive and thrive. I'm your host, Nate Littlewood, and today's guest is Tom Eddelston, who's the co-founder of Fabric, which is an Aussie-born, US-crafted beverage company on a mission, as they put it, to unfuck tomorrow. Fabric blends the ritual of beer with modern alternatives. Think hop-forward, non-alcoholic, and hemp-derived beverages, built with premium Aussie ingredients and a public benefit mandate. They've even pledged 2% to mental health initiatives, putting margin where their mission is. Tom, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Cheers, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, Tom, I'd love to get started just talking a little bit about positioning of the brand. This is a really interesting business that you're building here. You've kind of positioned the company at the intersection of functional beverages, obviously non-alcoholic beer, and also hemp. Given the multiple angles and dimensions to the brand, I'm curious how you kind of think about communicating the unique selling proposition to customers. And is there such thing as, I guess, a hierarchy of benefits that you think about when you're introducing people to the company?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yes, we are kind of sitting at this nexus of three booming categories. Obviously, non-alcoholic beer in general is blowing up in the US. We saw athletic brewing has really been just a meteoric rise, and yet it's still its total sales pale in comparison to non-alc beer in across the EU, for instance. Then the functional beverage category is exploding as well, and then hemp beverage, I would say, is totally nascent, a little obscure at the moment, just because of the regulatory patchwork, and a lot of people just have no familiarity with this category, which is really THC in beverage format. So something that has been relegated to the walls of dispensaries for a very long time is now available in liquor stores, over the bar, and even grocery stores across the country. And its prevalence really just depends on which state you're in. So there is a lot to communicate here, and we felt that with Fabric, we wanted to kind of tap into those different trends. We think that function, as far as feeling something, is really, really important, and it's what a lot of non-alc lacks. So a lot of people will have the feedback of, non-alcoholic beer, why bother? And so when you use either conventional functional ingredients or hemp-derived cannabinoids, you can really tailor the experience. And so as far as the hierarchy goes, I think that there absolutely is a hierarchy, and that we do have a lot of differentiators that we're trying to impart upon the customer. But most importantly is taste and ritual. I think that that is really like the entry hook, is saying that we're beer adjacent. We can replace something that is a familiar routine for you, and we can do so in a way that's 0 calorie, 0 sugar. As far as the next ladder down, I think the functional draw. So being able to feel something, we have unique cannabinoids tailored to the experience, and so our kind of flagship product is low dose and drinks just like a beer. So, you're getting a buzz. It's just coming from THC rather than alcohol. And then, once someone has picked up the can and, maybe they've taken it home and they're having a read of the label, what we aim to do is for that person to become either intrigued or loyal to the company by saying, wow, these guys are doing some interesting things. It's unique Australian ingredients. It is, a hop varietal that is native to Australia. And as you mentioned, 2% to mental health.
Yeah. Interesting. There's certainly a lot of dimensions to this. Well, Tom, you and I share the reality that we're both Aussie males, and I'm not sure about your childhood, but certainly growing up for me, beer and drinking culture was a big part of how I connected, with my mates and circle of friends. Um, I assume you're aware or you've seen some of the stats out recently. I think it was from a group called Gallup, looking at the number of Americans that are actually consuming alcohol on a regular basis. And I got to say, it's amazing how quickly this is moving. According to this data set, in 2021, 67% of Americans said that they drank alcohol regularly. In 2024, it was only 54%. That's a 13% drop in the space of only a few years. Do you have a view on kind of where this is going?
Yeah, I think that the stats speak for themselves, that every generation is drinking less alcohol. And
Hmm.
I think another interesting stat on top of that you mentioned is that 50% of American adults are actively looking to curb their alcohol intake. And
Mm.
we can speculate as to why that is. I don't think it's any surprise that we've had the Surgeon General come out and say that alcohol should be labeled a carcinogenic, which is what it is,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that many people are just more health conscious. They're more aware
Mm.
of what they're putting into their bodies, and that's not just alcohol. That's across the
Mm.
board. Um, I personally feel like there was a lot of people who reassessed their drinking habits and their relationship with alcohol coming out of COVID.
Hmm. Yeah.
Certainly, speaking from personal experience, that was me. I was having happy hour at 3 p.m. every day during that
Interesting.
lockdown period,
Uh-huh.
and probably overdid it, and
Yeah.
then looked to uh, probably over-index and say I'm going to cut back alcohol entirely. I mean,
Hmm.
I still drink, but
Hmm.
on the wrong side of 35, it is just now for me, 2 beers I'll feel the next day. And
Yeah.
if you are wearing a smartwatch, you are more than aware of the impact it has on your sleep. And so
Yeah.
the buzz that I used to enjoy so much and the ritual that you talk about, catching up with
Hmm.
mates over a beer,
Hmm.
um, what we're trying to do is just pioneer a new way to connect, maybe without some of the downsides of alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's talk about the brand positioning here. You've got a rather, shall we say, provocative tagline here, which is "Unfuck Tomorrow," which is, not just a little provocative, but it's also quite memorable, I think. And it's also kind of multi-dimensional in terms of how you could interpret that. I'm curious how you went about testing that in terms of the demand pull that it created and the strength that it has in terms of attracting people to the brand and the product versus the potential downsides that it may represent or the challenges that it could represent, be it through, relationships with regulators, distributors, or, mainstream retailers. How did you think about, structuring that brand slogan? And is there anything that might encourage you to tone it down a little bit?
Yeah, it's one that we felt really captures a lot in really 2 words. So of course
Mm.
we've mentioned that we have this mental health angle. We've mentioned that the no hangover kind of element of consuming hemp beverage versus alcohol, and
Mm.
so Unfuck Tomorrow to us felt like it can be very ambiguous,
Mm-hmm.
open to interpretation in a good way, and that can either be societally or otherwise. And candidly, I think right now that the US, there are a lot of people who are very disenfranchised, and that
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of discontent. And so for a lot of people, it really resonates. And
Yeah.
as far as trialing that, we polled. I'd love to say that we were more sophisticated than we were, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really a matter of running it by friends and family and kind of dropping it on people to see how they reacted and just
Mm-hmm.
gauging their live response.
Yeah.
Um, I would say overwhelmingly, even including like quite conservative boomers or parents, that the response was, I love it. And,
Yeah.
some people felt it was a little too out there, but as far as distilling that message and making it a little more shelf friendly for,
Mm-hmm.
a grocery store, for instance, all we did was abbreviate. And so
Mm-hmm.
Unfuck Tomorrow becomes UNFK TMRW. That,
Mm-hmm.
when read, though abbreviated like that, becomes cryptic enough that it's almost a bit of like an insider tagline. So
Yeah.
if someone has seen that on our website or on our t-shirts, they know it
Mm-hmm.
immediately. But
Yeah.
for a 10-year-old kid who happens to see it in the grocery store aisle or
Mm.
distributor, for instance, they have no idea. And
Right.
so that's kind of been an easy way for us to get around it. And
Mm-hmm.
when we explain to them what it means, they're usually
Mm-hmm.
on board as well. They kind of like the tongue-in-cheek play, and
Yeah.
like us, they feel that it kind of captures the essence of what we're trying to do.
Very nice. Cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the mission here and your 2% pledge towards mental health. Can you tell me, why was that mission important to you? I mean, why is supporting this an important thing for you and the brand to be doing?
Yeah, so it's myself and two co-founders, and we kind of all have our own stories and experiences around mental health. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, my dad had a mental illness, and ultimately that led to him taking his life. So
Wow.
it was something that was pretty transformative in my life at a young age. I was
Mm.
20 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
so something that I was just have always been very much aware of is uh, mental health, both my own and those of my friends and family. And it's something
Mm-hmm.
that growing up as Aussies, you know, in Australia, there was a lot of the culture was, we bury our feelings, we don't address
Yeah.
it, we don't talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to think that the world has evolved and
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people are more willing to seek help and speak out.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But the stats are still horrific as it pertains to, mental health outcomes in the US have never been worse.
Mm.
Suicide remains a huge problem. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, for us, we're not necessarily trying to say you need to do everything perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
We are, more of a brand that's focused on the small rituals, the small way that you can, unfuck your tomorrow. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing that is helping you lead a better life? And for some people, that'll be drinking less
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. For some, that'll be substituting THC for alcohol, where they may sleep
Mm-hmm.
better, not have the lingering effects the following day. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for others, it's just trying to get outdoors. It is reconnecting with friends. And
Mm.
I think, unfortunately, one thing that happens when you do curb your drinking is that that is a huge social outlet for a lot of people.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the time that you spend at a bar interacting with strangers in like a real community environment
Mm.
is also impacted. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, we are certainly not preachy. That's not
Mm-hmm.
our brands. That's not us.
Mm-hmm.
But what we are trying to do is encourage people to just check in with themselves and their friends, and just have a little think about what are the small things they can do to improve those outcomes.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. That's really cool. I'm curious how much analysis or thought went into the actual 2% number. As I think you know, my day job is working with early stage brands as a fractional CFO. So I spend a lot of time looking at their financials, and it's, not unusual to see a profit margin for businesses like this in maybe the, 5 to say 15% type range. So what we're potentially talking about here, like 2% of revenue, it could be, 25% of the profit of the company. And if you think about, valuation of these businesses, which is commonly tied to the profit that they generate, if 2% is going away to a pledge like this, there's presumably some sort of valuation impact. I'm wondering what sorts of conversations you guys might have had internally about, taking that financial hit in order to support a mission, which is, for great reason, very important to you, versus, some of the financial obstacles or valuation obstacles that it could potentially represent for the business longer term.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was certainly something that we didn't take lightly. But
Mm-hmm.
for the three of us, we felt that um, finding this nexus of profit and purpose and kind of proving out this model is something we felt very strongly about. We legally incorporated as a public benefit corporation, so
Mm-hmm.
we actually have a legal obligation to consider, societal impact alongside financial, and
Mm-hmm.
a requirement of that is to have a philanthropic angle. So we're already
Mm-hmm.
looking at, a lot of brands will do 1% for the planet, and
Mm-hmm.
there are some excellent initiatives where they're giving revenue.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that as the baseline and really
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go above and beyond. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not naive enough to think that brands will purchase our product exclusively for this, but we
Mm-hmm.
think it is one of the you know many kind of differentiators that tells people that we are we're not just another brand. We do give a shit, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
And candidly, some of the alternatives, I see a lot of brands that will do things like 10% of profits.
Yeah.
But as you know, Nate, as an early stage CPG company, especially in beverage, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this business is so capital intensive that brands will run for years without even breaking even, let alone
Mm-hmm.
producing any meaningful profit.
Yeah.
And so that felt totally disingenuous, and that it was a claim that was no substance. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stand the idea of someone coming to us after 2 years of operating and said, "Oh, you give 10% of profits. That's amazing. What
Mm-hmm.
causes have you given to?" And
Mm-hmm.
us saying, "Well, we yet to donate a dollar."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is something that we felt we've got to put our money where our mouth is, and we actually
Mm-hmm.
are even looking at ways that we can go above and beyond that. So we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a DTC launch in October, and
Mm-hmm.
we are currently looking to identify a charity partner. And
Mm-hmm.
the first 10,000 cans that we produced, our idea is that we would like to do 100% of proceeds to that organization. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is again where, from a purely financial perspective, that is foregone revenue, and it's a big cost to us at a time when we could really use it.
Mm-hmm.
But my bet is that this will have a disproportionate impact on our DTC business.
Mm-hmm.
It will stand to generate earned media. It will help us drive organic reach that will far and away it'll be completely disproportionate relative to throwing some dollars at meta ads and hoping that that sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, we think that it will resonate with people and are willing to make that bet.
So hypothetically, what would you say to a customer who said, "Hey, instead of charging me $50 for a case pack or carton, whatever it comes in, instead of charging me $50, just charge me 2% less and make it 49 because I don't want to support the philanthropic angle to the business." How have you thought about how you might engage a customer when and if that situation were to arise?
Candidly, no. Really, because I think that that's just not our customer,
Yeah.
and it's not something. I mean, it is on the back of our can, the
Mm-hmm.
2%,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not something that is plastered all over the front of the can.
Yeah.
And We think it's really, it's got kind of going back to that hierarchy of you've got to really like the taste, you've got to really like the brands, it's got to fit an occasion for you. And
Yeah.
then after that, if you happen to acknowledge that we give 2% of revenue,
Mm-hmm.
if that's something that, you know, you find value in, amazing. If you don't,
Mm-hmm.
you probably just overlook it and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and in a space that's getting increasingly crowded, there are plenty of other alternatives. But
Sure.
uh, yeah, we think that the people that this does reach, there are a lot of. I think most people would be lying if they said they hadn't been impacted by mental health in one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about opportunity versus discipline. So I'm by no means an expert, but my understanding is that the hemp space at the moment is a bit of a wild, wild west, and there's a bit of a lot of folks essentially going on a cash grab and a money grab. It's incredibly fragmented from my perspective. It seems like every state has slightly different rules, and it must be mind-numbing to keep up with all the changes and the way that regulations are changing in this country. I understand that you have taken quite an intentional approach to this in terms of looking at lower doses, having a quality first approach. And from what I recall from our conversation the other day, I think you mentioned that you're having a fairly compliance heavy approach to this, which I presume means it's harder for you to participate in this short-term kind of opportunistic cash grab that a lot of the industry is participating in. And you're, I guess, going for more of a slow, steady burn. Can you talk me through, firstly, I guess, have I got that correct? And secondly, if I have, can you talk me through the decision framework that basically got you to that point?
Yeah, sure. I think you hit the nail on the head. It is a Wild West dynamic out there at the moment, and we're talking about a federally legal product that has been subject to state level rules and regs across the country. So, exactly to your point, it's a total patchwork of regulation, and some states will permit, 20 to 30 milligram products, not just beverage, but any kind of THC product, so long as it is hemp derived, to be
Mm-hmm.
sold. Others, like California, have banned it outright. And then
Hmm.
states like Colorado, where I sit, have, uh, as soon as this, they saw this coming, we have a regulated dispensary model here in Colorado, and
Mm-hmm.
they sought to protect the dispensaries by really limiting the dosage. So the
Mm-hmm.
maximum dosage cap in Colorado is 1.75 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go, a state over in most directions, it is Wild West. So Nebraska, you can order 10 milligram cans over the bar. And, at breweries, you can pick up a 4 pack of 10 milligram cans to go.
Hmm.
So um, also, I think it worth noting is that there is an absence of large scale, bev alc players at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because they're not willing to invest the capex dollars when you have this looming question mark on the industry. They're waiting for
Right.
more clearer federal guidance before they jump
Mm-hmm.
in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's meant that it is it, you know anyone and everyone can jump into this category, put some THC in a seltzer water, and you're on shelves and selling.
Right.
And the relative novelty of the category has meant that that's all you have to do. If you are on
Mm-hmm.
shelves, you probably will sell.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that and thought a lot of these brands are meeting the market where it's at today. They're trying to
Mm-hmm.
do the maximum legal dosage in a can. And for high use consumers, that represents a great value play. And that could be sold online, shipped to your door, and suddenly you got weed in a can arriving at your doorstep
Yeah.
for the first time in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, we chose to stick to low dose.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say low dose, really, the industry typically refers to anything from 1 to 5 milligrams as low dose.
Mm-hmm.
We're not exclusively low dose. We also do a 10 milligram can. And part of the rationale there is that that is the top seller across the country right now is
Mm-hmm.
10 milligrams. And it makes sense. A lot of the early adopters are people familiar with THC, and they see this as an alternative to smoking a joint, and they can get it, again, shipped to their
Mm-hmm.
door. But our flagship SKU, excuse me, is our 1.5 milligram. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason for going that direction was, one, it's what's compliant in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
It enables us to participate here in a market where there are only 4 or 5 brands actively selling.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we look at some of the states that have fully embraced this space, like Minnesota, there's around 300 brands competing for
300. Wow.
three.
That is
Yeah,
insane.
it is. And I mean, Minnesota's a really interesting market to watch. It was one that established a regulatory framework that said anything up to 10 milligrams can be sold in liquor stores, at bars, gas stations, really anywhere and everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so in some liquor stores throughout Minnesota, THC now represents 15 to 20% of sales, which is
Wow.
incredible. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. So then you look at California, where it's banned outright, and no one has any awareness this category exists.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
Colorado, funnily enough, given the low dose, has very little category awareness as well. So
Mm-hmm.
firstly, we saw that as being a huge opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
that with a beverage that our target occasion is any time you would reach for a beer, you can reach
Mm-hmm.
for a 1.5 milligram hemp beverage,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
yeah, that without any of the calories, sugar, or destroyed sleep. And
Yep.
so yeah, we are very intentional about playing in this market.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think where we're trying to go is meet the market where it's going rather than where it is
Mm-hmm.
today. And we
Mm-hmm.
see that, bev alc players are sitting on the sidelines looking to jump in, and grocery stores, which do huge volumes of any beer and hemp beverage in the US, grocery stores are going to be a massive channel for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear constantly from distributors and buyers that what they're looking for is a consistent product.
Right.
Consistency is key to them. They need to
Mm-hmm.
understand the chain of custody, and
Mm-hmm.
by that I mean where was the hemp grown, what was the supply chain, documentation, rigorous documentation at each step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really saw an opportunity to say, hey, we want to build for Whole Foods. We want to be the
Mm-hmm.
brand that ticks every regulatory box and get ahead of where the market's going. And we think by doing so, that is going to open doors for us that others get shut out of because they're pursuing short-term profits.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
yeah, and I would say that that's playing out. We're having conversations
Yeah.
with some of the largest beer distributors in the country,
Yeah.
and it's music to their ears that we are
Mm.
taking a level of self-regulation and
Yeah.
compliance that others are simply chasing the quick buck.
I think they call that playing the long game, Tom.
That's
Yeah.
that is exactly right. That's a much more articulate way of explaining what we're trying to do
Got
here.
it. Got it. Well, as a fractional CFO who works with a lot of, e-com and consumer brands, a topic that I find myself talking about fairly frequently is channel strategy and go-to-market strategy. Now, usually if a brand was looking at expanding into retailers, they would pick kind of a region and go after a demographic that was kind of aligned with their brand and their product and so forth. They might look to set up a distributor relationship in a certain part of the country, and maybe they would work with a salesperson or a broker who specializes in that region. I Would love to understand a little bit more about your go-to-market plans here. Given the very, very uncertain and it seems rapidly changing regulatory landscape here, how are you thinking about, the retail strategy? What does the right approach look like for all the different types of retailers? I mean, there's obviously alcohol stores. You mentioned supermarkets just now. You have got a D2C launch. I think you said October, so just around the corner. Might even be the past by the time this podcast is out. But there's a few different interesting channel options here. How are you thinking about kind of the ordering and sequencing of these?
It's a great question, and it is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about because we have this really unique opportunity right now where we are at the ground floor of a category that is poised to be one of the fastest growing adult beverage categories ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the a little more regulatory certainty, we think that the big bev alc players will move in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's going to result in a lot of consolidation. We're going to see a lot of margin erosion, and so really we're kind of thinking about first, if that's to happen, what differentiates a good brand from great, and who
Mm-hmm.
gets the distribution opportunities with some of the biggest distributors versus those who get relegated to a smaller regional market and they become just a small regional player.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about channels as well as capital constraints, it's
Yeah. Well, I'm
uh,
going to come to that next. We're going to talk about
yeah,
the dollars shortly.
yes. So it's a constant challenge because in some ways, conventional wisdom in beverage and CPG is deep, not wide, going really
Yeah.
deep into one market and
Mm-hmm.
trying to demonstrate that you've found product market fit, that you are showing real velocity and
Mm-hmm.
repurchase,
Mm-hmm.
and then expanding outwards from there.
Yeah.
Um, in this space, given the pace that it's moving, we think you need to be omni-channel from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a distributor here in Colorado who is pushing out our hemp beverage products.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, we have our forthcoming DTC launch. But one thing, I think another differentiator for us is that we have a non-infused functional product.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a beverage that we can sell anywhere and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that enables, it's kind of like our Trojan horse. We have a functional product that we can sell on Amazon, that we can
Mm-hmm.
sell in any number of big box retailers across the country, and that can
Mm-hmm.
really seed those accounts for us.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with accounts that are a little skeptical of hemp beverage or a bit mindful of the
Mm-hmm.
optics. A lot of people are like, "Hey, it's what what's the PR implications of me carrying THC?"
Right. Right.
Um, and so we are trying to say, "Hey, we've got an offering for you," and
Mm-hmm.
be actively playing in that space.
Yeah.
So channels, we're more interested in trying to find the right major distributors and
Mm-hmm.
the guys that we can scale with in a big way than we are doing kind of a land grab right now.
Yeah.
And it's again the playing the long game here. We think that the big distributors are going to create portfolios of 5 to 6 brands and are going
Mm-hmm.
to push those out anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
Our goal is to be one of those 5 to 6 brands with a powerhouse national beer distributor rather than have a book of 20 distributors around the country who are doing it in a more scrappy way.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. So I guess this is a great segue into what I wanted to ask next, which was about financing and funding. As you know, and you're from a bit of a finance background originally as well, from what I understand. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. I spent the last 10 years in real estate private equity.
Okay, okay. So you know your way around a set of financials, and you're very aware, I presume, of just how notoriously expensive physical product companies can be to launch. Some of the channels that we've been talking about today, they can require so much capital in terms of, putting free fills and promotions and coupons and everything that's needed to basically build them out, that they can actually take many, many years before they start returning cash to you. I would love to understand what's going through your head in terms of financing and funding the business. Like, how have you financed it thus far? What do you think the financing needs are going to look like for the business over the next couple of years? And what are maybe some of the contingency plans that you have in place here? Like, if we get this financing, then we'll take, this go-to-market strategy. Or if we only get this financing, then we might have to take this strategy again. I'm curious how you're thinking about, fitting some of these pieces together.
Yeah, it's another great question that is always top of mind. I would say yes, it is a very expensive space in order to scale. I think we benefit from the relative novelty of this category. So
Mm-hmm.
we early on we've been just laser focused on margins, and
Mm-hmm.
the hemp beverage space we can command really strong margins, which helps a lot versus say non-alcoholic beer, where there is a very
What
clear price
what do
ceiling.
what do gross margins actually look like in a category like this?
I would say gross margins can consistently be 70 plus percent,
Okay.
and even higher if you
Mm-hmm.
are laser focused. And
Mm-hmm.
so we would be looking at trying to produce, a minimum 70% gross margin. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, then also knowing that compression is on the way, that is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're an early brand as well, everything is inefficient.
Mm-hmm.
Everything
Yeah,
is inefficient.
I'm into that.
Yes, yeah, you get there's no volume breaks on pricing. You're
Yeah.
getting the worst possible pricing on cans, on ingredients, on your tolling fees from co-packers. It
Yeah.
is really everything hurts. And so you have to be laser focused on margins, and you have to be also projecting where those margins can get to with
Mm-hmm.
scale and with really streamlining operations. So
Mm-hmm.
that's two things that I think if you've got your margins right, you overcome a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what I've seen, many brands overlook that piece and
Mm-hmm.
think that volume will make up for their razor thin margins. And
Yeah.
that's frankly a game that we don't want to play.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say margins primary concern. Then, as far as
Mm-hmm.
funding goes, we the first few months of this operation were on my personal credit card,
Mm-hmm.
and so we didn't want to go out and raise money from friends or family until we had a tangible product.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as we had a concept, our first pilot run in hand was when we were able to go out with a straight face and say, hey, we have a product, your dollars are going to go into scaling production and
Mm-hmm.
not go into ideation, legal fees, etc.
Right. Right.
So we raised 200K from friends and family just via a safe,
Mm-hmm.
and that is all we've raised to date. And so coming from the finance background and kind of trying to understand how an investor would look at Fabric or any other CPG offering, one really important thing for us was to demonstrate capital efficiency and show that we can do a lot with a little. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that will be pay huge dividends for us, because we're now at a position where we've got a production run actually happening today, another one next week, and it'll be about 60,000 cans, launching an online business, building a team, and
Mm-hmm.
building what we think is a really robust brand for 200K.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
to scale, obviously we need to go and raise, but we
Yeah.
think we'll be in a much better position to kind of win over investors and secure capital quickly because we've taken
Hmm.
this approach.
Yeah, nice. Listening to you talk about that, it reminds me of something that Joey Cafone mentioned in episode 3 of this podcast. He said to me, Nate, it's a lot easier to build a business in a spreadsheet than it is in real life. And the point was that, 5 or 10 minutes in Excel or Google Sheets, like you can run the numbers on businesses like this and do the unit economic math and actually understand if you're going to get to a point where you've got an interesting business out the other side of it. It blows my mind how many founders skip that step. And, they'll spend 2 or 3 years launching a product, designing a product, getting into retailers, opening up new channels, blah, 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 only to realize that the unit economics just don't work. And there really is no way to fix them by that point. I'm curious, as someone who spent a number of years, in and around numbers, looking at finances, fairly businessy sort of mind. What would you say are some of the major differences in terms of how someone like you has approached building a business like this compared to what you see other founders around you doing?
Yeah, I think uh, a few things to touch on here. So yes, I spent 10 years living in Excel spreadsheets, and
Mm-hmm.
I've probably created more financial models for investments than I care to admit. Um, it was the last concern for me was
Mm-hmm.
creating a financial model. I think
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of founders obsess over creating a robust, complicated financial model
Mm-hmm.
without having any quality inputs. And just like
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
making a lot of some assumptions that are fed by, AI or whatever they can find online about the
Mm-hmm.
kind of volume that they're going to produce. And I just think that is um, it was not something that seemed of any importance to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, on the other hand, I beat to death our margins. And so I
Mm-hmm.
look at those, every week if there's a change in a product, we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly tinkering around the edges and saying, what does our uh, ultimate retail price need to be? Are we going to
Mm-hmm.
see more sell through and velocity if we can lower the retailer price? And
Mm-hmm.
what kind of incentives can we come up with for the distributor? And
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that all have margin implications. And
Mm-hmm.
if your gross margin is sufficient to support the advertising you need to do, the kind of incentive structures that I'm talking about, then you've got a bit of room to move, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not constantly in the red. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's probably the biggest difference is just, of course, we have a financial model that we're building upon, but
Mm-hmm.
what we're more trying to do is take the lessons and learnings from rolling out in one market and then ensuring that we
Mm-hmm.
have really good data and great assumptions that we can feed into the model to give ourselves a at least somewhat accurate snapshot of what the next market or markets can look like.
Mm-hmm. I'm expecting that will be music to the ears of any investors who may be listening to this podcast. Just knowing the level of detail and attention that you're dedicating to looking at these margins and numbers and unit economics. Really impressive. So, Tom, I'd like to ask a couple of more, shall we say, reflection type questions here as we move to wrap things up. In the time that you spent on this brand to date, what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes you've made so far? Whether it be about the brand or the product or a channel decision, and how did you unwind it or overcome it? How did you get through this mistake?
Oh, geez, where to start?
Well,
Um,
it's only a 45-minute podcast, so.
yeah, that's right. I would say the biggest mistake was we'd just gone out and raised capital. We had our
Uh-huh.
first, friends and family came in. We had about 40K in the bank,
Mm-hmm.
and we had uh, an opportunity to work with who we thought were really leading consultants in helping us formulate a go-to-market strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a 15K expense that
Mm-hmm.
still I think about all the time, and that it was something that we really got extremely little value from.
Right.
And it was some consultants who produced, chat GPT, regurgitated information, and tried to talk us through stuff that really was not profound in any way. And
Mm-hmm.
in some ways, I think it was a really good lesson learned early on, because to any founders in CPG, listening to those who are just getting started, there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who will try and convince you that only their guidance and advisory services, that it's the keys to the kingdom, and it will open
Mm-hmm.
doors that you otherwise can't open for yourself. And they're full of crap.
Mm-hmm.
There's, especially in the kind of AI world that we live in, there is very, very few things that you can't figure out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And reach out to other founders, reach out, Nate, to people like yourself who are credible experts who are there to assist and provide a real service of value versus, I mean, it probably boils down to, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And I'm not sure if you got a different answer for this one, but I think the other thing I wanted to ask you is, what is something about starting a CPG brand that you wish you knew before you started building one?
Oh, um, it's relentless. You you have to really be across uh, all of it all the
Yeah.
time.
Tell
And
me more about that. What do you mean?
I think that if you are trying to run lean, like unless you have deep pocket investors who are giving you a lot of runway from day one,
Mm-hmm.
if you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to build a bootstrapped brand,
Mm-hmm.
then it entails you needing to know a little bit about a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
also, just kind of as I alluded to, the last question was just discerning, who and what is of value, and
Yeah.
who can help you on your way, who's trying to sell you the magic pill.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, I mean, I was uh, enthralled by a number of these consultants that reached out to me and said that, like, hey, we can have you in Rolling Stone magazine next week, and all of these kind of promises that come with, oh, just
Mm.
$5,000 a month plus an equity stake. And
Right.
so I think, uh, yeah, you just have to be constantly trying to determine, what is of value, what do you need help with, what can you
Mm.
afford? And
Yeah.
then I would definitely encourage people to adopt that investor mindset of,
Mm.
what are the metrics that investors are going to look at, and yeah, what is going to move the needle and help you secure funding going forward.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, it's certainly a grind, but I am impressed by the approach you're taking to all this. It's certainly a fascinating time to be in this space, with things moving so rapidly on the regulatory side, on the consumer demand side. Yeah, it must be a fascinating ride that you're on, and I will continue to watch it with great interest. Tom, before we wrap things up here, where should people go if they are interested to learn a little bit more about you or the business? You mentioned the D2C launch coming up. It'd be a good time to plug that. Where would you like me to send people? I'm going to include all these links in the show notes below, by the way.
Great. Um, we are our website, drinkfabric.com. We, yes, have an upcoming DTC launch, and it'll be a charity drive in October. So
Mm-hmm.
please check it out, and support us and support mental health. Um, Instagram, Drink Fabric, and you can find myself and the Fabric team on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks again, Tom. Happy Friday. And been great having you on the pod. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Nate. Really enjoyed it.
Take care. Bye.